I titled today's mind map, The Royal Road to True Concentration. This particular title was actually stimulated from a reading session that I had with James Allen's As a Man Thinketh. And I wanted to tie this over to what we talked about on Sunday, which is assuming it is done, as learned from Neville Goddard, to maintain a lighthearted conviction on the day-to-day journey in relation to our vision, while having this focus and concentration, also expanding awareness to see higher degrees of potentialities so we can connect the dots and go into higher levels of output or yield, that state of mind where hunches, inspirations, creativity flows, which was expressed via the discussion I did on Charles Haanel's chapter, in which we talk about the concept of radiance. That's what we want to do. Allow our radiance to be expressed on the day-to-day journey to realizing our vision via flow. So let's get into this section here. He says, a man should conceive of a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts. It may take the form of a spiritual ideal, or it may be a worldly object according to his nature at the time being. But whichever it is, he should steadily focus his thought forces upon the object which he has set before him. He should make this purpose his supreme duty and should devote himself to its attainment, not allowing his thoughts to wander away into ephemeral fancies, longings, and imaginings. This is the royal road to self-control and true concentration of thought. Even if he fails again and again to accomplish his purpose, and he puts, as he necessary must until weakness is overcome, the strength of character gained will be the measure of his true success, and this will form a new starting point for future power and triumph. So contained within here is the essence of journey and destination. We pick a goal, a vision, we commit to it, assume it is done, and we go on the journey to maintain, or as Neville Goddard puts it, persist in that state of mind to bring forth the vision. Now, many of us on the journey know what it is that we have to do. And each day, when we show up and we look at the various things that we do, we want to maintain it as in that state of mind by looking at the things that we have to do and see it in harmony and in contribution to our vision. Now, I discuss this a lot when I work with businesses and clients in the entrepreneurial space, when it comes to projects and tasks. And one of the things upon reflection of my journey that has helped me is really valuing the concept of flow, which I had learned from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book, Flow, which is essentially to embrace the challenge and acquiring new skill on the journey. One of the things that I really valued from listening to James Allen is the emphasis on valuing the journey and seeing it as correlation to what is in our thoughts. Now, if we have the ability to analyze effects in the outer world to the cause within, we could see where we are not maintaining this power. Intuition guides us to certain ideas, and our goal is to see them all the way till completion, in which we understand ourselves further and then evolve a character or the identity that's one with the vision. I learned this from the 80-20 principle, which is something that I was very fascinated by and I studied for many years. The idea behind it is that 20% of the efforts produce 80% of the results. I did this a while back. I tracked the amount of business that was generated by my clients during my IT business days, and I found that 20% of the clients were producing around 80% of the revenues. I also found that with the various things that I did each day, 20% of the things that I was doing were producing 80% of the output and yield. Now, the key is to see the first idea or the first few ideas into completion So we get reflections, optimization data, and do it from a place of flow. Because while we're in flow, we get hunches, inspiration, and we develop this power of concentration. But also, one of the things that we find is we get this understanding that not only is the journey point to point, as in start to finish, but it can be exponential as far as returns go. You can get to the destination faster, easier, if you maintain your flow because of what's happening while you're in flow, generating the insights and perspectives. As a matter of fact, I remember the time when I discovered the 80-20 principle. It was while I was in flow. I remember saying to myself, there's got to be a different way of producing results rather than repeatedly doing the same thing every single day and seeing this small incremental progress. There's got to be a more exponential way of doing things. And some way, somehow, I came across the book Flow and found that getting into flow and maintaining it was where hunches and ideas would show up. So I made it a priority. And when I did, I came across some other concepts that seemed to be stimulated by the subconscious associations to flow, which is doing things that are higher leverage and higher output. And then I came across the book 80-20 Marketing and Selling by Perry Marshall. Although he was speaking from the perspective of marketing and selling, and in relation to that story I shared of me analyzing and looking at the numbers and then revealing that 20% of my business or 20% of my clients were producing 80% of my results as far as revenues go, I then said, what if this is true with other areas of my life, the tasks that I'm doing, the projects, and so forth? The importance of what James Allen referred to in this particular paragraph in relation to the concept of flow. In flow, the brain actually releases norepinephrine, dopamine, endorphins, anandamide, and serotonin. Norepinephrine and dopamine tighten focus, helping us tune out distractions. So this is one of the things that we want. We want to exclude distractions out of consciousness. So one of the ways to exclude distractions out of consciousness is to get into the flow with the day-to-day things that you're doing, and I'll talk about how to do it in a moment. And because when you're in flow, you actually have these releases of neurotransmitters, which contribute to higher degrees of flow and also help us gain the insights that we want, which is said to be a result of anandamide, which brings forth bliss and intuitive insights, endorphins relieving stress and pain, and serotonin helping us feel good. These combinations of neurotransmitters bring us into an ideal or flow state of mind. So let's tie this into the process now. The first thing we want is a clear goal at an abstract level. So that's the vision, what we desire to see brought forth. That's the goal. That's what we are committing to. That's what we have committed to. Now, on the journey, we get ideas, hunches, inspirations. It's important to see these ideas into completion. So usually what we do when we have these ideas is we turn them into tasks or projects, and we use a software like Trello or something to manage these tasks and processes. Now, the key to it is to actually be able to see these things into completion from a place of flow, because when you see them to completion, as in you complete the task or complete the project, you gain hunches and inspirations on how to integrate the 80-20 principle as you find more effective ways of doing it even better. I always share that there's fundamentally a few thought processes that run through our mind that we want to recall on the day-to-day journey at the end of the day, ideally, to reflect upon their tasks, to get more yield and produce more output. They are as follows. You can do, you can delegate, you can automate, or you can eliminate in part or in whole. Whatever it is that you do each day, you could probably optimize and do it even better. You could delegate it to somebody else on your team to do it, so you can focus on something else that is maybe more higher leverage as far as output and yield goes. If you're caught up doing a lot of day-to-day work tasks, then perhaps what you can do is delegate those tasks so you can focus on innovative or creative tasks, driving the business forward. Now, another thing is automation. So there's lots of technology and processes available to automate. since I come from a background of automation in my 10 years in corporate IT and in my IT business days, I do a lot of automation right now in relation to what I do so that I could focus more on the creative output-based initiatives or on high leverage things like deal making, innovation, sales, and marketing. These are important things for me. These are also things that I'm very good at. And these are also the things that I find flow in. So we want to be clear as to what are those things for us? What are the things that we do that can get us into flow? And actually, in relation to choice, one of the things that we want to recognize is the doorways to flow. Number one is we can take on a task or project that challenges our abilities while having a just manageable stimulus on our skills so that we cultivate more skill on the journey via the challenge. Flow essentially is found where challenge meets skill. Another thing is doing what you love to do. Motivation also stimulates us into flow. If we love what we do, then we're going to find more flow, which is why I recommend, and I do for myself, do the things that I really love to do while I automate, delegate, and eliminate, in part or in whole, the other things. And as mentioned, I focus more on automation. And what ends up happening then is the day-to-day journey. I'm clear on my vision. I'm clear on my goal. You're clear on your vision. You're clear on your goal. You're clear at a more granular level as to the tasks and projects that you have to do each day. So then what we do is we get into the flow by sitting down and committing to seeing it all the way to completion. You could do it in an hour block time, 30-minute block time, or commit 2 to 3 hours to do that thing. Except you're going to do it more from a place of flow and seeing it as a practice to integrate what James Allen refers here, because this really is how a person develops an unwavering, lighthearted conviction on not just what they're doing right now, but in future successes. As he states, even if he fails again and again to accomplish his purpose, as he necessarily must until weakness is overcome, which again is our ways of thinking about what we're doing. The strength of character gained, which is essentially becoming one with our vision via our identity, will be the measure of his true success. So we always say this. It is who you also become on the journey when you produce the success that is equally as valuable when it comes to producing a vision or bringing it forth into reality. And he also says that this will be a new starting point for future power and triumph, because who you become and what you learn will lay a foundation for your next goal and your next vision. This has always been the case for me, and having conversations with many people and working in this space for many years now, I see the same pattern. And if you look at your own journey, you'll find the same thing. Now, one of the things that helps us maintain this flow on the day-to-day journey is qualitative or quantitative indicators. Qualitative is essentially, do you feel in flow while you're doing the thing? And identifying the flow breakers, if any, and changing those flow breakers. And if you want to get into flow breakers, I did another video on flow. I'll put a link in the description. I recommend watching it, so that you can feel more engaged in what you're doing. And part of it really comes down to doing the things that you love to do and actually finding certain projects or tasks that are challenging for you, but not too overwhelming. It's not to say that one wouldn't do overwhelming tasks to develop a higher degree of ability to manage that level of complexity. But one of the things we want to do is maintain more flow each day so that if we do find ourselves in situations where we're dealing with a lot more complexity, because we've been maintaining flow, a certain state of mind for an extended period of time, and also understand that there's different levels of flow. There's more of a light flow. There's a deeper, more engaged, highly focused flow. Somewhere within the range is the sweet spot, depending on what you are doing. So, for example, when I speak publicly, when I do my videos, or during my consulting, I get more into a peak flow. However, when I'm doing things like working on some spreadsheets or creating some kind of information bundle to put together to present as a piece of content, I'm more in a light flow. Again, these are the things I actually want to do, because with the things that I don't want to do, I automate, delegate, or eliminate in part or in whole in relation to my vision. So everything is moving forward towards the vision. It's just done from a perspective of valuing, distinguishing the relevant few that are important, exercising my power of choice, committing to the things that I know I have to do based on the opportunity selection. I'm selecting from the array of opportunities that are available, different things that I could do, different opportunities that I have, based on the 80-20 principle, the 20% that will produce 80% of the results. Now, this is something that has become a way of being for me. In the earlier stages, I had to be more mindful of this process. So I recommend watching this video a number of times and integrating it more so each day. And you'll find that you become unconsciously competent at this, and you'll just do this naturally. It'll become who you are, which in essence is maintaining the state of mind, which again, as James Allen refers to, will lay the foundation for the starting point for future power and triumph in relation to whatever goals that you set up or visions that you have in the future. Now, quantitative indicators are also important. These are number goals. So this is where people can do things like measure their progress, measure their prospecting calls, how many prospecting calls they do a day, how many sales they have a day, how many different conversion points, if you're into the whole selling process, were optimized as a result of what you were doing. Or things like more general quantitative indicators, such as I'm going to do 4 Pomodoros on this particular project today. Some of you might know the Pomodoro method, which is essentially committing to sitting down and doing a task for 25 minutes focused on the task, taking a 5-minute break, and repeating the process as needed. So a Pomodoro is a focused work session. This can be very valuable for somebody because then what ends up happening is they can set a goal to do 4 or 5 or 6 Pomodoros, and they'll be actually finding more flow because their goal is to complete the Pomodoro, and that way it seems more of a granular level goal, which has the tendency to stimulate flow. Know that one of the reasons why we release automatically dopamine in our brain is because of a reward mechanism. We do a task, we get a reward, dopamine release. So essentially aligning with how the brain naturally works to bring forth more flow and maintain a state of mind that is one with our vision. The next is harmony between challenge and skill. Again, I've discussed these concepts before all throughout my videos, and I made 2 important videos in relation to flow. I recommend watching it so you can hear the same conversation articulated from different perspectives in relation to different areas. So that way you can pull the bits and pieces that are relevant to whatever it is that you're applying it for and integrate it into your process so that you can find more flow on your day-to-day journey to produce success. Next is harmony between challenge and skill. So as mentioned, one of the things when it comes to flow is a sweet spot where something is way too challenging. It generally is harder for a person to find flow. However, they can, once they get better at understanding the inner dialogue that occurs on the journey while you are working on things or during the tasks and projects, and they can actually speak themselves more into flow. But for now, I suggest developing a habit of picking projects and tasks during your flow-based work sessions that are a little bit more challenging, such as maybe your goal is to write an email that's going to go out to a list of people. So you set up your Pomodoros and you say, I'm going to do 5 Pomodoros of me committing to sitting down and writing this email. And perhaps it's a lengthy email that requires a lot of reflection because there's a lot of nuance in it based on communication, and this communication is going to facilitate some kind of deal. So you want to reflect upon it, not just an email that you would sit down and put together in 5 minutes. And for some of us, especially those that are astute with copywriting, we want to look at a number of different variables, such as where we're leading them to and what's going to happen after that, the call to actions, value propositions. There's a lot of things that might be involved with writing a email that is designed to facilitate business or deals as a result of the nuance and complexity behind it. And so it may take 3 or 4 Pomodoro sessions to craft something that is really valuable. However, those that enjoy doing this, I enjoy doing it personally, find flow in doing this so that they can craft a message in a way that's really precise and it's fun. and they challenge themselves, and they have the skill, they understand a certain level of direct response marketing, consultative selling, and copywriting. So they sit down and they're able to do it. Or it could be something like, I just have to clean up my email inbox, clear this out. So I'm going to dedicate 3 Pomodoro sessions or 2 Pomodoro sessions to clear out my inbox. And so then what ends up happening is a person sets a challenge up within themselves, and they commit to that challenge, and they end up doing the actual task and finding more flow as a result of it. And you can do this with various different tasks that you have. Now, the thing about this is what ends up happening is you get into the flow. And this is when you start to notice actions and awareness become one. So when you set up the next tasks or projects, you're deeper into the flow. You get the following effects as articulated in Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Very important book. I recommend reading it. Attention is absorbed by the activity. So you're so submerged in what you're doing as you move on from the next task to the next task, next project, and so forth. You become very involved in what you're doing, and you tap more into your intuitive ability to pull forth ideas, hunches, creative expressions that will allow you to, if you're doing some kind of projects that are art and creative based, you'll notice you'll be more connected with what you're doing. You'll perform better. You'll express more clearly. If you're doing some kind of administration tasks or business tasks, you'll notice that you'll get some ideas of how you can potentially optimize it or delegate it or automate it or eliminate it in part or in whole. And thus, by integrating that in the future, your business and your initiatives will be able to bring forth more yield. You'll also notice that you're able to handle large volumes of data, complexity. So one of the things that we want to get better at is to deal with high levels of complexity. We get better at dealing with high levels of complexity by stepping into the flow and maintaining it, because then what happens is automatically we're able to make rapid and correct decisions. We'll be able to see the connections and the relationships between the various things that we're doing and the nuanced distinctions and form interesting connections. Now, the cool thing about this is when you form these connections, then let's say you're in a leadership role where you share this information with others to help others also achieve it. You're able to share with them the hunches, the ideas, the insights, and perspectives that you've gathered, such as the case that I do with this particular video right here, as well as my other videos. All of the insights and perspectives that I have are a result of getting into the flow, maintaining the flow, and then noting these things down to share with others. Automatically, we notice that distractions are excluded out of consciousness. If a person experiences overthinking, fear, doubt, and indecision, they'll start to notice that it starts to taper away. Because once you're deeply into it, then what ends up happening is you're very engaged in what you're doing, and you love to do it, and that's where you want to be, and you don't want to be anywhere else. And as a result, time gets distorted, and you experience what we call autotelic, where the activity in the person becomes autotelic. Now, as you continue to maintain this, and I recommend taking some breaks in between, let's say you work 8 hours a day, you'll find that your day, at the end of the day, was highly productive, highly effective. You'll actually be living these particular elements here discussed in As a Man Thinketh. And so let's reflect upon what we spoke about so far and relate it over to this particular section from As a Man Thinketh. He says, a man should conceive a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts. So when you're in flow, it really does become the centralizing point of your thoughts, this purpose, this vision. And you're so stimulated by the ideas, the hunches, and inspiration that you get out of doing these things that you actually fall deeper in love with what you're doing, a deeper level of engagement. And you find you're automatically concentrating more so each day on the day-to-day journey, the tasks that you have to do, because you really want to be there. And he says it may take the form of the spiritual ideal, or it may be a worldly object according to his nature at the time being. But whatever it is, he should steadily focus his thought forces upon the object which is set before him. So it's one thing to say, focus your thought forces on the object and tell yourself that. It's another thing to look at it from a perspective of how we naturally focus upon the object that's in front of us. It is done through flow. We're supported by the neurotransmitters, we're supported by the mind, we're supported by the emotions, the physical, and the spiritual. He says he should make this purpose his supreme duty and should devote himself to its attainment, not allowing his thoughts to wander away into ephemeral fancies, longings, and imaginings. This is the royal road to self-control and true concentration of thought. So what ends up happening is, as a result of getting into the flow and maintaining it, automatically your mind will not wander onto things. And if anything shows up within your awareness that distracts you, you'll notice you'll automatically go back to what you're doing because that's what you really want to do. And what you'll notice is that this will become a way of life. I noticed about myself that in the earlier stages of this journey, it was harder for me to maintain focus and do it from a place where I'm forming the connections, increasing the awareness. Because I believe it's important to have laser sharp focus. I also believe it's important to have a broad array of awareness to the different potentialities and perspectives, both at the same time, which, by the way, is developed while you're in flow. You'll notice this automatically happening. So if something takes your attention and it's relevant, you'll give it the attention needed to produce the results. We call this being opportunistic. Now, that's something that is automatically, you could say, figured out intuitively within ourselves quickly. And this is when a person has really gotten to this level of being at a deep level. And we'll notice this happening again and again and again until what we refer to as weakness is overcome. So again, he says, if he fails again and again to accomplish his purpose, we want to look at it as the vision, plus the projects and tasks and the day-to-day activities in relation to the vision. And he goes on to say, as he necessarily must until weakness is overcome. The strength of character gained will be the measure of his true success. So this is very important because the weakness that he's referring to doesn't imply as you are weak, as we talked about also in the last video. It is not to say that you are a weak person. It is to say that certain thinking patterns, and that's the weakness that we are overcoming. It's our own internal conflict in relation to the things we have to do each day. Because the truth of the matter is this, and we talked about this also in the video that I released last Thursday, which I'll put a link in the description, the water hyacinth story, which was simulated from The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, another book that I recommend, which is essentially showing up each day and doing the things that you know you have to do to produce results. And we're doing this from the perspective of love and flow, and this is a result of removing any kind of inaccurate thinking in relation to those things, the internal resistance. This makes the identity one with the vision. Now, I don't have it on my screen right now, but many of you know that I refer to the Robert Dilts logical levels regularly. On the top, we've got vision, then we got identity, and then from identity, we got the values and beliefs, the behaviors, the capabilities, and the environments. Those are the things that change as a result of being more of that identity that is one with the vision. When you saw yourself at the end, and if you ask yourself to reflect upon how does that person live, you'll notice that that version of you does those things that you know you have to do each day and does it from a place of love and flow. And you can be that person right now. And one of the ways to do it is to integrate what was discussed in this video. So let's reflect upon those components again. The relevant few, intuitively guided, we know the things that we have to do each day to produce our results once we commit to the vision and not overwhelm ourselves with the large volume of potentialities. Thus, applying the 80-20 principle can help us over there. And recognize that the ways to get into flow is to do tasks that are just manageable as far as stimulus and our skills, but still challenge us, while also doing what we love and going through the process of delegating, automating, or eliminating other things can help as well. Then, with those tasks, maybe you would commit to something like a Pomodoro method or carve out some time to sit down and see them all the way to completion, that we can actually become that identity that's one with the vision. Again, we'll have the clear goals at an abstract and granular level. We'll have some immediate reporting and feedback, some perhaps qualitative indicators such as, how do I feel when I'm doing this? Quantitative, Maybe you got some numbers to measure. And I can give many examples for numbers, but I gave some generals so you would look for how you can, if you can, might not need to. I know others that don't necessarily use quantitative indicators, although I like to use both qualitative and quantitative indicators, so that when you have that immediate reporting and feedback, you know you're making progress. And as mentioned earlier, that further stimulates the dopamine. Now, the harmony between challenge and skill and engaging in it and seeing it all the way to completion, we start to notice actions and awareness become one. Distractions and lack of concentration, fear, doubt, and indecision particularly, gets excluded out of consciousness. And if things show up that we say distractions, we'll notice we'll not automatically reactive to them and go back to what we're doing. We'll be so engaged with what we're doing because we really love to do it. Time will feel distorted and we'll become one with, autotelic, with that particular task or that particular project in relation to our vision. So let's go ahead and conclude this with an affirmation to further instill this by reflecting upon the section from As a Man Thinketh. We can say, I commit to the purpose in my heart and I'm set to accomplish it. The purpose is the centralizing point of my thoughts. Thus, as I commit to doing the things that I know I have to do, I find myself automatically focusing my thought forces on the object which is set before me. This purpose has become my supreme duty, and I'm devoted to its attainment. I find myself automatically not allowing thoughts to drift away into elements that are not in harmony with the opportunities that I have selected. As a result, I'm better able to distinguish the 20% that produces 80% of the results. I commit to this and see all my tasks and projects to completion. I realize then that I am strength. I have the ability to change how I relate to the different things each day by maintaining my flow, and this brings forth a higher degree of conviction to my vision, thus aligning my identity with the vision, and this leads me all the way to my vision, which then further lays the foundation and starting point for future power and triumph in relation to my next vision. So I trust that you found this to be useful and beneficial. And as mentioned, go through this video a number of times, as well as the other videos that I've done on flow. And I trust as a result of integration, you'll have more of a flow-based journey to realizing your vision. And if you want to get into the further nuances, the tools, the spreadsheets, and all the things that I use to facilitate the flow-based day, I recommend my productivity program, which I'll put a link in the description, and you can become a part of that if you'd like. If you like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.